One last question to each of you. Boston was a model for a conversation on race in the 90s that seemed to work. It was called Operation Ceasefire, and the cops and members of gang communities got together with the people they trusted most, namely their mothers. And the cops said to the kids, you gotta stop doing this. And the mom said, you've gotta stop doing this. If you offend, you're gonna have a swift punishment, but if you don't, the community's gonna be better. And because trust was rebuilt, violence went down. To what degree is that a model for the kind of conversations about race you want to have? And what do you hope will emerge from these conversations about race?
I mean, I think that back in the 90s when they were talking about Operation Ceasefire, they were trying to get guns off the street. And I don't know how deep they dived into the root cause of what was happening in the city of Boston. They really didn't have a race conversation back then. They had conversations around race, but they really didn't dive into a race conversation. And I think that when I look at what's going on in the country, I mean, we can talk about there's bad blood in a lot of cities between the young men of color in the Boston Police Department, or police departments, I should say. There's some good relationships. There were problems in our cities of young men of color and women killing each other. And then there's also, when you look back, if I go back to the beginning of the relationship between the police and the young people or the killing, it's really a lack of opportunity. It comes down to having a lack of opportunity in a lot of ways. I mean, we have to fix the relations, there's no question about it. We're doing a lot of different things in Boston, and we're very cognizant of that fact. We're gonna have race dialogues, but it really is about giving young people the opportunity to be successful. Many of the young kids that we have in creating violence or being part of violence in the city, they dropped out of school. So there's no future for them. They don't have an opportunity, they don't have training for a job. They're not on a pathway to college. So we really have to focus on how do we change, the culture's the wrong word, but really change the mindset and give young people the opportunity. What I noticed with Operation Exit is that you don't have to have a college degree to work in the construction fields to make good money. And the young people that got into that program, now what's happening is there's a conversation going on in a lot of the neighborhoods of Boston saying, wow, that's a real program, how do we get into it? Right. It's a pathway out of poverty, out of crime, out of worrying about being shot. So I think when we talk about the relations in the city, whether it's police, community, or whatever it is, it's deeper than that. And I think we have to go all the way down as a mayor. And I think we're in a different position than senators or congressmen to have that conversation, to be able to go in and do that because we have more at our disposal. But we have to make sure all the parties are at the table having the conversation. And there's a lot of, I think, Mitch, when you mentioned, I watched a few faces in the audience when you talked about the police relations apologizing to each other. That seems good that seems good for us as mayors. We want that to happen, but I think it goes deeper than that. And I think I think it's important for us that the young people need to be at the table. They need to be at the table to have this conversation. And also, but one thing I will say, in some cases, some of the young people also have to have an open mind coming into this conversation because it's about dealing with the past, but how do we move forward? So we need to hear about what's wrong with the police processing now, but we also need ideas on how do we move forward.